Welcome back to another Drag Race Deep Dive. My name's Jack, and I just want to talk about some Drag Race right now. It's crazy to imagine that 9 seasons of Drag Race have aired in just the year 2021. We are on a Drag Race overload right now, and though a lot of people are burnt out, I can't help but be happy that queens are getting a chance to shine at a faster rate. But today, I want to take things back to where it all started. I love to break things down to see how we got from point A to point B, and I want to do that with the Drag Race franchise today. As of right now, I believe that there are 6 eras of Drag Race, with a 7th maybe on the horizon, but we have to see season 14 just to see how everything shakes down. I'm recording this intro at the end of the editing process, and guys, it took so much more to get all the clips together than I thought it would take. I was getting clips from every single season of Drag Race, so if you enjoyed the video, please hit the subscribe button. It keeps me motivated, keeps me going, and yeah, it'll just help me out a lot. This video is inspired by one of my favorite creators on the platform, Peridium. He is one of the best content creators who makes content on Survivor and Big Brother, so if you like either of those shows, you should definitely check him out. I'm going to put his videos and his channel in the description because this video topic is such an interesting concept, and I'm so glad I get to tackle it. So with all of that out of the way, check the links in the description, and let's get started with the video. Shorten that runway and slather on that Vaseline because we obviously start the first era with season 1 of RuPaul's Drag Race. There's not too much to say because the show is both similar and different to all of the seasons that follow. Obviously, they knocked the core concept of the show out of the park, and the format has always been the same, and it's a system that's worked for over 13 years now. You have an introduction to each episode, Rupaul, possibly a mini challenge, getting ready for the maxi challenge, a runway, and then a lip sync for your life. Now, what's different, you may be asking? I mean, just look at the show. It's not really the same looking show at all. It was filmed in the World of Wonder basement on a shoestring budget. The camera quality is bad because of that. To hide how poor the camera quality was, they slapped on a filter that just makes everything look kinda greasy. Not to mention that the prizes of the show were less than stellar. BB won $20,000 for her performance on the show, something that a queen on All Stars can match or beat in a single lip sync. And also, Anjano won a chocolate basket for one of the challenges. It's clear right off the bat that the ideas and ambition were there, but just not the budget. The show also kind of lacked its own identity. Instead, it chose to parody a lot of the famous reality competition shows at the time, such as America's Next Top Model.
I flew you first host in this competition!
I think everyone aboard the team to create the show knew the concept wasn't going to be completely well received at first. So they played into the absurdity and parodied other shows and played into the Drag Race car aspect a lot more. If they controlled the joke and absurdity, they couldn't really be criticized for it. Much like Big Brother, the first season of the show is insanely different from the rest, so it deserves its own era for just how much of an outlier it is. Defining characteristics of this era include the filter, different workroom and main stage, leaning into the car drag race a lot more, and overall being more of a parody than having its own identity. The good thing though was that viewers were able to look past the flaws and just enjoy the show. Drag Race showed a lot of potential and was slowly growing a cult following, so it was given a bigger budget the second time around. I originally had seasons 1 through 3 grouped together all for the vibe that they gave off, but the more I thought about it, the less it made sense. The next era of Drag Race contained seasons 2 and 3. The budget was higher, so they were able to drop the filter and expand their workspaces. They could cast more queens, secure more guest judges, and create a show that's still recognizable to viewers today. This is a topic that should get its own video one day, but the visual branding of Drag Race is just so distinct. They nailed the design of the runway and the workroom in the second season, and beyond cosmetic upgrades, it's still recognizable to someone who may have just started watching the show recently. It's also distinct because of the challenges they made that are mainstays on Drag Race nowadays. Snatch Game and The Ball are 2 challenges that wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the success of people like Tatiana, Pandora, or Raja. And of course, how can I forget the creation of the behind-the-scenes masterpiece Untucked that brings perspective and drama to the show. The introduction of Untucked was an early sign that producers knew how to make good TV. This is one of the best ideas for a show that is literally just people sitting around and talking. The producers recognized the drama and the personalities they could push with a show like this, so they captured every moment possible. Some of the most iconic moments of Drag Race are from these early seasons of Untucked, and without the drama, I'm not sure it would have stayed around for long. Now, at this point, did the show blow up and create superstars? Not quite yet. People were becoming more established thanks to the show, but I believe Jujubee said that when she went back to Boston and the show would be playing in bars, there wasn't much excitement that she was on TV. I believe the first queen outside of the winners to really establish themselves with the boost of Drag Race was Shangela. Shangela can play up a role on TV like no other. She spun straw into gold being the first out on season 2, but showed so much potential they brought her back for season 3. She saw just how iconic and well received her entrance and performance was, so she was able to capitalize on the notoriety and make appearances on other shows like Dance Moms.
Laquifa!
Shangela served as an example to other queens and the showrunners that maybe the show can expand someone's career beyond just the drag scene. With the growing audience, people were looking at personalities from the show and thinking, oh, I would really like to follow them more. Characteristics that define this era and separate it from the first era are no filter, iconic challenges that are still done today, new workroom and main stage, untucked, and the pushing of personalities that helped careers but didn't make them quite yet. So, as the audience grows with each season, they hit a stride that brings us to our next era. Seasons 4 through 6 make up the golden age of Drag Race. Where seasons 2 and 3 had a promising structure, great queens, and an expanded budget, season 4 is where we truly saw the extent to what they could do to create amazing television. These 3 seasons are still regarded as some of the best of the series all these years later. The show finally found its own identity, still playing into the campy absurdity of drag, but with an increasing reliance on the queens' personalities to carry the show. Before I continue, I want to say that each season that borders an era like season 4 in this case still has influence from an earlier era. Season 4 has a similar vibe and budget to seasons 2 and 3, but there are enough distinctions and similarities to 5 and 6 that I believe it belongs in this era. The thing that tethers season 4 the most is the 2 spin-off shows of Drag U and All Stars. Both used queens from seasons 1 through 4 and finished before season 5 aired. I often group season 4 queens together with seasons 1 through 3 because of these shows, but season 4 serves as such a transitional and revolutionary period for the show, it needs to be split up. The biggest change of season 4 was the introduction of the live finale. It's a really fun format that I think would be perfect if the crowd didn't stop the queens from completely speaking their minds. The format was originally changed because Perez Hilton, aka the scum of the earth, leaked the winner of season 3 before it aired. It's common knowledge now that they film every finalist winning, and only when the show airs do the finalists actually know who won. The edit was the strongest it's ever been within this time period. It was twisted, manipulative, and disingenuous a lot of the time, but that's honestly what made it so great. You get moments that long-term viewers catch onto because they're obviously taken out of context, but you don't really care because of how entertaining it is.
Except for Serena. Guys, no. I request the floor, ladies.
The editing style is so much more in your face, and it resembled a lot of the same energy of other reality shows at the time. With the lack of social media influencing queens to act a certain way, we were able to get some amazing characters and villains that drove the narratives like nothing before. I believe these are the 3 most authentic feeling seasons outside of maybe season 8. There's a sense that what the queens say is organic and no Emmy moments are trying to be pushed. If they have a conversation about HIV, it's because the queens are choosing to have that conversation. Granted, the producers ask the queens to ask guiding questions a lot of the time, but I feel like these seasons, the queens were a lot more open to talking about their lives without the need to make it a TV moment. The edit of the show does take out a lot of the nuance of the heart-to-heart talks, but even through that, I still feel like a lot of these talks are more authentic than the newer seasons. The casting of the seasons was also genius. I don't even need to get into Coco and Alyssa, but other casting like casting Alaska right after Redacted, Adore and Courtney being rival Idol contestants, and Ben de la Creme filling in a similar vibe to Jinx, it felt like the casting was casting for storyline rather than for archetype. A lot of the casting nowadays is like, ooh, the kooky queen in Crystal Method or the professional queen in Rosé, but in the past it felt way more like they cast because they wanted to create a storyline right off the bat. You can argue which one is better because I think there's strengths to both, but with this type of casting during the golden age, it gave us some of the best TV ever. The seasons aren't without problematic moments or controversial queens, but each season catapulted multiple queens into stardom on the level or even surpassing Shangela. Where Shangela used the show as a stepping stool to further her career, this era of Drag Race was the first to make careers right out of the gate. By season 4 of Drag Race, queens from around the United States realized what the show could do for their careers, and each passing year allowed for queens to cultivate their talents to be camera ready. By season 6, queens like Bianca Del Rio, Ben de la Creme, and Courtney Act were established professionals who just needed Drag Race to maximize their reach. I am positive each of these queens could have been huge without Drag Race, but during this era, Drag Race was just the best place to turn if you wanted to expand your career. The queens weren't the only ones who saw the opportunity to grow their brand. World of Wonder really growed their branding during this era, promoting tours such as Battle of the Seasons. Touring for the show, whether affiliated with WoW or not, was absolutely massive during this era. Characteristics of this era include a more in-your-face editing style, better handling of controversial issues, increase from shady queens to full-on villains, live finales, and casting for storyline rather than for archetype. Season 6 was definitely the first season to gain a lot of traction online, with Adore Delano becoming the breakout star. Adore was really able to capitalize on her wonderful personality and garner a following that the producers saw as a win and a possible way to profit in the future. Adore really appealed to the young masses, so did this affect casting in the future from here on out? Yeah, it did. This next era contains seasons 7 and 8. Queens like Adore Delano showed the producers that there's a new way to get notoriety, through platforms like Instagram. Season 6 really helped to put Drag Race on the map like no other season, so casting looked towards a lot of younger queens with a social media presence to fill out a lot of the next season. This is all just a theory, but I believe this is around the time where WoW saw a younger demographic growing and wanted to jump in on it. So a lot of the next cast was a similar archetype that catered to young fans using Instagram. This is also further supported by the fact that there was a younger versus older storyline on the season, which we've never really seen before in Drag Race. This then continued into season 8 with the likes of Kimchi and Naomi Smalls to fill a similar role. It was dialed back a little bit, but it was still very clear this was an archetype that they're now going to cast for. Seasons 7 and 8 were also the first seasons to really talk about social media. The finales were largely kept the same from the previous era, but now contain performance numbers for each of the finalists. I think this is the best finale format we've had. It shows off the talents of each of the queens without risking a frontrunner of being eliminated. During this era is where we started to see a ton of YouTube content from queens from the golden age, with a couple of shows starting a little before this era. World of Wonder knew there was potential in expanding content with queens off the show, and they were able to make it work in a very mid-2010s way, basically copying ideas from other channels but putting drag queens into it. It was extremely entertaining content regardless. Something that I really remember from this era though is that they were not too keen on using clips from the show. The closest thing we would get to clips is the lap recaps, which have aged just so poorly. It was obviously a product of the time, with WoW probably not seen posting clips like Snatch Game or the Rusical as profitable. Now this sucked for viewers in a lot of ways. Unless they had cable or recorded an episode, it was tough to see a certain moment or even a lip sync like we can today. If WoW jumped on the opportunity earlier to post clips like Shade the Rusical, I feel like the show would have gained more traction earlier on. The introduction of Season 7 gave them the opportunity to bring more content to the YouTube platform. The absolute juggernaut of YouTube unpremiered during this era. There was one other juggernaut that used to be on TV but moved to YouTube that defines this era, that being the show Untucked. The reasoning behind this move was never really explained, but theories of budgeting issues or time slots needing to be freed up are often discussed. I definitely believe they wanted to keep Untucked on TV, but didn't have the budget or time slot to do so. So instead it was put on the WoW Presents YouTube channel. The vibe was extremely different, but it was still the same show at its core. It was a lot more stripped back for obvious reasons, yet the queens' personalities were still able to shine through.
After a long night of hooking, Trey didn't like the session, so he had good at me.
This era of Drag Race was really awkward to say the least. It felt like it was fighting to keep old traditions alive that had been working for a while, like touring, but wanted to get ahead of the game on things like social media content. The issue with the social media part is that WoW had no idea what they were doing for a very long time. It also didn't help that Season 7 wasn't really well received, especially coming off of one of the best seasons of all time. Season 8 was an improvement for fans, but was really short for some reason. The whole era was having an identity crisis trying to juggle multiple demographics. This was until August 25th, 2016. Season 8 was really fun, but obviously a lot shorter than all of the other seasons at the time. This was because of a gamble WoW took to retry an old spin-off. All Stars 2 changed the trajectory of Drag Race. It took a lot of the budget from Season 8 to make it just as good as it was. Towards the end of the era, it felt like WoW was finally listening to what fans had to say. The show could have probably survived if it kept pushing out a single season each year, but I don't think it would have reached the heights it's reached today without All Stars 2. The season felt like a love letter to fans of Drag Race who have stuck around for a long time, and the format catered to a strong social media presence. Worse seasons in the past, like season 6, had trending moments and really iconic quotes. All Stars 2 was the first season to have consistent interaction on social media regardless of the episode or the content in it. Characteristics of this era include a heavier emphasis on social media and projects from outside of the show, YouTube Untucked, a newer fashion queen archetype starting to form, while really knowing what will get them popular towards the end of the era, and the finale format slightly changed to give each queen a performance number. The promise of All Stars 2 and the increasing audience with each season didn't go unnoticed. Viacom moved RuPaul's Drag Race from Logo TV to VH1, increased the budget, and pushed it out to a larger audience. And from here, they never looked back. Lady Gaga. That's how they were able to show off their new home. They were able to solidify the gay icon herself, Lady Gaga, as a guest judge for their first episode on VH1. The first episode's iconic guest judge is now a staple on Drag Race. That's the best way to describe this era. They were kind of able to do whatever they wanted. Often in the past, it seemed like they wanted to expand out and be more ambitious, but there was always the hindrance of the budget. It was not a problem anymore. Did they want to do a gigantic set with a cheerleading challenge? Sure. How about an Olympics floor routine? Yeah, why not? Were they good challenges? Not really. The era includes seasons 9 to 11. Season 9 again is like season 4. It has a very similar vibe to seasons 7 and 8, sharing the same workroom, runway design, and YouTube Untucked. But aside from the shift to VH1, there was one obvious new change to the season that has now become a mainstay on the show. It's hard to think of the show without the lip sync for the crown format, and boy do I miss it. Sasha and Peppermint gave us some of the best moments of any TV show ever, and then accidentally sent us down a path of rough recreation of a former magic. I'll save my opinions on this finale format for right now, but what you need to know for this video is that the lip sync for the crown format easily splits up seasons 8 and 9. The show has continued to expand beyond just the main show RuPaul's Drag Race, garnering 2 more All-Star seasons and a spin-off in Thailand. Drag Race Thailand, along with the Switch, but I forgot to write that in the script, were the first 2 international seasons of Drag Race. They were largely disconnected from the main show of Drag Race as they changed up the formats a little bit, and they also aired in a different era, causing little international attention outside of diehard fans. Seasons 10 and 11 continued to grow what Drag Race was able to do with the budget they were given. Season 9 was an extreme format shift that learned from All Stars 2 on what could get them traction online. The lip sync for the crown format gave them iconic moments that pushed their presence in gay culture and social media. In addition, another mainstay was fully solidified during this era, the cast songs. It was started during the last era with All Stars 2 Reggie Rochu, but I'm convinced Category Is solidified it as a staple of Era 5. Every season now there will be at least one cast song, sometimes a mid-season number or a catchy musical that they could put on streaming. What's clear is that this is the first era where WoW really knew they could use social media and streaming to capitalize and grow their empire. What's also clear is their attempts to gag us on the show. Season 9 had a really consistent social media presence, so for the next 2 seasons, they tried to recreate a lot of these moments. An unexpected lip sync twist, an undercover guest judge, double shantays, everything was being recreated from season 9. Obviously, moments like this happen in every season of Drag Race, but things like the 6-way lip sync were moments the producers expected to go viral, but I bet half of you forgot that even happened. Overall, all of their attempts were for the best. It shows that they care and want to give us entertaining TV, even if it doesn't always land. WoW Presents on YouTube during this era finally found its rhythm as well. Of course, was a smash hit, and shows like Fashion Photo Review, The Pit Stop, and What You Packin' kept getting updated to higher quality. Everything was getting the correct amount of money pumped into it, and Drag Race fans were very satisfied. Towards the end of this era is where we saw RuPaul starting to live out her conquest fantasy. RuPaul's Drag Race UK aired its first season in 2019 to acclaim across the board. It really felt like a very back-to-basics format in the best way, taking what was good about the main show, dropping the twists, and just creating a great season of Drag Race.
Much better.
Not to mention, it was the first international season that was still hosted by RuPaul. It had a very clear connection to the main show, which gave it a lot more viewership than something like Thailand. Characteristics of this era include the lip sync for the crown format, episode 1 iconic guest judges, a controlled self-awareness for pop culture success of the show, improved social media content, and new spin-offs in a couple countries that showed the talents from around the world. Now that WoW knew they had a strong foundation for the main show and stakes in other countries, they started to expand their horizons and set up a meteoric takeover. We finally made it to the most recent era. 2019 was a rough time for Drag Race. UK Series 1 was a hit, but All Stars 4 and Season 11 left fans feeling a little tired of the format. World of Wonder and the producers have shown to listen to fan criticism and improve the show over time to keep fans' attention, and that's exactly what they did. One main issue of Season 11 was that it was hard to get invested in the queens, especially the early outs, because 15 of them walked in at the same time. In response, Season 12 split the cast into 2 premieres and promoted 2 new songs. WoW was able to have its cake and eat it too. The format shift was great for fans and queens because no one fell behind, and WoW was able to market 2 new songs on the show. As for All Stars 5, the format was cool and we saw it work in All Stars 6, but it was a little rough at first. These 2 changes gave this era of Drag Race a strong start, and everything after that really gave too. This era was defined by expansion. The last era was starting to get out there, but was still mostly defined by the main show. Now, Drag Race is an empire where you can actively choose to watch or avoid a certain spin-off. If Season 13 wasn't your cup of tea, try some British tea with UK Series 2. Was UK Series 3 a little too messy? Try Canada's Drag Race Season 2. The overload is insane, but I can't deny how happy it makes me that everyone is getting their time in the spotlight. And finally, they are completely comfortable showing clips from the show on their YouTube channel. They upload the lip syncs right after the show airs, the acting challenges, the musicals, basically everything the viewer wants to see a second time. Even though there is so much content in this era, I still don't have a ton to say. It's what we know and love. We aren't going to be running dry of Drag Race content ever again, be waiting longer than a month for a new season, or worry they may be in over their heads. From the show, to the edit, most of the time, to casting, to everything beyond the screen, they have found their stride and they aren't going to sway far from that. The question remains whether the formula is good or not, but that's way too much to get into right now. It's hard for Drag Race to expand even more, but they're trying all different outlets. I believe this isn't the last era of Drag Race, and with Season 14 premiering today, there may be a new era a lot quicker than we think. At this point, Drag Race may just become more and more mainstream. We've already seen bits of this with Rupaul hosting The Tonight Show and Simone being at the Met Gala. It just feels right. I am so excited to see where the next era will take us. There are problems with Drag Race, but seeing an LGBTQ show as big as this should never be taken for granted. Characteristics of this era include complete branding of songs with now multiple songs a season, split premieres, spin-offs for almost every country ever, mainstream interaction, and YouTube and WoW presents content from a ton of different queens. This is obviously just my opinion, and if you think a certain season belongs in a different era, that's great. I think my grouping shows a good mix of the trends on and off the show and how we got from each era to the next. Thank you guys for watching. I recently had to take down a lot of my videos due to applying for monetization, but I'm gonna retool those videos into something that's monetizable, and they should be back up pretty soon. Once again, a large majority of you aren't subscribed, so if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out. I just created a Patreon. I'm still working out a lot of the kinks, so a lot of the January content will probably not be as exciting. I'm gonna go full force in February, but if you want to sign up right now, that would be amazing, but I get if you wanna wait a little longer so there's more content, that totally makes sense too. The link is in the description and in my About page on YouTube. I'm also starting a second channel because it seems like a lot of you guys are vibing with my personality. If you guys want to go subscribe to that, it's linked in the description. It's just going to be videos, little sketches. I don't really know exactly what I'm doing. I want to do videos with my friends, so if you guys like my face, go subscribe.